kind of presenting. I do small groups. So if I get too far away from the mic, yell at me, and if I go too fast, yell at me. So I'm really excited to talk to you about this topic. As Ruth said, I've been passionate about this since 2012 and become more passionate all the time. This movement began in the 1990s. In 1992, at the Omega Institute in New York, they had a conference called From Aging to Saging, and 1,500 people from around the country came. Then in 1995, Rabbi Zalman Shlachter Shalome published the book From Aging to Saging. In this book, if you read the poster or the email description, he proposed a new model of late life development. He called it saging. He said this model would help older people become spiritually radiant, physically vital, and socially responsible elders of the tribe. He also called this process spiritual eldering. When I discovered this book, it changed the way I saw aging completely. Then sometimes later, I discovered the nonprofit organization Saging International. Unfortunately, Reb Zalman, as he liked to be called, died in 2014. But this organization has continued his work, and it's really growing. In September, I enrolled in training to become a certified saging leader, and I'm really excited about this training. Today, I would like to give you a glimpse into what this movement is all about. As I share what Rabbi Zalman says in his books, I'm going to use a lot of quotes, and I think you'll know what I'm quoting, because it won't sound exactly like me. And so I'm not going to keep saying quote, quote, quote. When From Aging to Saging was published, Rabbi Zalman said that people from across the country were embracing what was called successful aging. That's an activity-oriented approach that promises physical vigor, continual intellectual growth, and meaningful work during the elder years. But Reb Zalman said it didn't go far enough. He said we need a psycho-spiritual model of development that enables elders to complete their life journey, harvest the wisdom of their years, and transmit a legacy to future generations. And he went further to say, without envisioning old age as the culminating stage of spiritual development, we short-circuit the process and put brakes on the evolutionary imperative for growth that can be unleashed by increased longevity. When I read this, it really made sense to me, instead of just thinking of aging as diminishment and loss. In the beginning of the book, he shares how he came to be doing this work. When he was approaching 60, Reb Zalman realized a feeling of futility had invaded his soul and plunged him into a state of depression that no amount of busyness or diversion could dispel. He was a world-renowned teacher and a personal friend of the Dalai Lama, and someone who traveled the world with spiritual leaders. But something was shifting inside of him. New and unfamiliar questions were stirring in his heart. What would be next? Who would he be if he could no longer do everything he had done in the past? Carl Jung, who coined the term second half of life, says, "We cannot live in the afternoon of life according to the program of life's morning. For what was great in the morning will be little at evening, and what in morning was true will at evening become a lie." Reb Zalman had intuited this, but he said there were no good role models, no codes of behavior, scripts, or social expectations to shape and give meaning to this time of our lives. Therefore, in 1984, he went on a 40-day vision quest. On this quest, when the surface noise of his mind died down, he realized he was sloughing off an old phase of life that he had outgrown. He then decided to create the Spiritual Elderling Institute to help people learn how to live in the second half of life. At this point, I would like to tell a joke because you look all so serious. It's kind of freaking me out, but I'm going to persist. So in 1995, as I said, he published From Aging to Saging, a profound new vision of growing older. I'm going to begin talking about this with a concept at the heart of saging, which he calls harvesting. Harvesting is gathering the fruits of a lifetime's experiences and enjoying them in old age. He says, when we harvest, we consciously recognize and celebrate the contributions we have made in our career and in our family life. We also appreciate the friendships we have nurtured, the young people we have mentored, and our wider involvements on behalf of the community, the nation, and ultimately the earth. He refers to the enjoying of these achievements as a high art, and he says we're not very good at it, so we need to intentionally work at it. Harvesting is a crucial second half of life task. While in the first half of life, we do the outer work, but in the second half of life, we do the inner work. We need to focus more on that inner work. And harvesting is an important part of this. Wisdom doesn't come just from having experiences. It comes from reflecting on life's experiences. There's another integral part of Reb Zalman's saging program, which he calls spiritual intimacy. He says that while work like this can be done alone, it can be done so much more effectively in community. He suggests that we search for companions and fellow travelers of this unexplored territory who share a compatible vision of human growth and lifestyle practices. I actually really think this is exciting stuff, and I know I don't sound like it and it's bothering me, but again, I'm going to persist. As we do our spiritual eldering work, we will have a need to speak with such freedom that we feel comfortable sharing our most tentative mind stirrings without having to be defensive about every word. So, what are the core topics of saging that will help us to harvest our lives? A good place to begin is with the life review. As we do life review, it's important to reflect both on the positive and the difficult events and relationships from our lives. Often when people consider doing life review, they're hesitant to look back at what was painful. But the good news is that time is stretchable, not linear. We could do what Reb Zalman called reconstructive surgery to free us from the tyranny of the past. He says the past is merely a mental construct, a story we created about a set of facts and circumstances. When we originally created this story, we were young and immature, and we jumped to conclusions that we may not have re-examined in our maturity. As we look back after years of experience, we will be able to see the past through a very different lens. And through this lens, we can repair our lives. Sometimes pain-filled experiences turn out to be our greatest teachers, as they take us unexpectedly where we need to grow. Often what was a harmful act in the moment turns out to have had good consequences for us, in spite of how hurtful it was in the past. When we courageously confront the past, we discover how much we have gained from apparent losses. How many of you have looked back at an experience that was really traumatic and see it in a different light now? That's part of harvesting and part of saging. I don't know if I got to the end of that sentence, so I'm going to read it again. For example, what was originally a hurtful situation may have forced us to deal with a difficult part of our personality, make a change in our life that we didn't want to make, or honestly face an aspect of our life that we've been avoiding. Another core topic of saging is forgiveness. Reb Zalman says, when we refuse to forgive someone who has wronged us, we mobilize our inner criminal justice system to punish the offender. And now, as jailer and warden, we must spend as much time in prison as the prisoner we are guarding. And all the energy we put into maintaining the prison system comes out of our energy budget. Energy that could be used much more productively. Furthermore, holding a grudge can be hazardous to your health because these habitual negative thoughts and feelings affect the immune system. And it is equally, if not more important, that we forgive ourselves. We all have unhealed emotional scar tissue that keeps our hearts closed and armored against repeated injuries. Spiritual eldering work also involves facing our shadow, that despised, rejected, unknown inner self who trips us up and sabotages us. By recognizing the shadow, we can forgive ourselves for our imperfections. Engaging in life review and life repair will also help us deal with what Reb Zalman calls life completion. I really like that phrase. Life completion is a concept that is essential to spiritual eldering. To begin with, it's important that we realize that death is not some cosmic mistake. Woven into the warp and woof of existence, the presence of death deepens our appreciation of life. The more we embrace our mortality, not as an aberration of God and nature, but as an agent urging us on to life completion, the more our anxiety transforms into feelings of awe, thanksgiving, and appreciation. People who face their mortality live out their lives with greater zest and joy. If we do the life repair work and the life completion work, we won't be overwhelmed with regrets when we come to the end of our lives. I wish we had some time to begin this work today on mortality because it's very powerful. Another core topic of saging is legacy. In this context, legacy doesn't mean the material gifts we will leave our friends and family, but the spiritual gifts. It means sharing with others through service as well as through our values and our philosophy of life. It means it means letting other people know what's important to us, what gives our life meaning, and what we've learned along the way that we would like to share. I would like to conclude by saying a little about the last chapters of this book. Reb Zalman says that our increased longevity has caused problems between generations, our generation and the younger generations. Saddled by staggering national debt, rising health costs, some young people view elders as greedy geezers, unproductive parasites motivated by self-interest who devour the lion's share of the federal budget. But Reb Zalman believes that the emergence of long-lived elders is occurring at this time in Earth's evolutionary history because the accumulated wisdom that comes from personal harvesting has planetary survival value. He says that without an acknowledged role to play in the world, elders are robbed of their dignity and self-worth. And he quotes gerontologist Thomas Cole, who said, "When the children leave home and the pressures of making a living have receded, elders should assume the mantle of responsible citizenship, working for the good of society." So that is my that's my little introduction to saging. But what saging is about is really not giving a little presentation like this. It's all about experiential work. So everybody now is going to be able to be in a small group that will be facilitated by, with one exception, people that have been through my class called Conscious Aging, a new paradigm, Conscious Aging, a new paradigm for aging. And they were nice enough to say that they would be willing to do this, and I think you're going to really enjoy being with them. Before I tell you about breaking into groups, I want to mention that I'm in training right now to become a certified saging leader. And because of that, I need to do certain things and get evaluations on them. So I'm going to ask each of you to fill out an evaluation for me. It won't take very long. And then if you would turn that back in, at that point I'll give you a handout, which says a few of the books that you might want to read and some other things. One of the things that it will say in the handout that I think is really important is that Ron Pevney, who is one of the gurus in conscious aging, he wrote the book Conscious Living, Conscious Aging. He's going to be doing a Transforming Aging telesummit online for free from March 7th through March 9th. And you can go to the Saging International website and register for it there. And this will be on the handout, what I'm saying. Or you can go to Ron's Conscious Eldering Center and register for it there. Also, if you choose to, you can buy it. You can watch the interviews that he'll be doing with all kinds of conscious aging people. Or you can, they'll be available for 48 hours. Or if you buy the whole program for $97, you can keep them, plus you'll get transcripts and some bonuses. This is the third summit he's done, and I watched both the first and the second, bought both of them, and just love them. I also was able to go on retreat with Ron. He's a fantastic guy, so that's really cool too. Plus, my mentor will be doing a Awakening the Sage Within workshop, which is a 6.5 hour workshop that touches on all these topics and has lots of great exercises. It's a lot of fun. So I have those flyers if you're interested in taking that. Plus I'll be teaching one myself in May or June. So, does anybody have any questions before I tell you where you go for your small group? Mm-hmm.
You mentioned something about when you are young and have a bad or good experience, you don't reflect on it the same way as you do when you're older. Could you give me an example? And if you don't know what I'm talking about...
I know what you're talking about.
Okay.
There's millions of them. The one I come with, I have a not a very...
The question, Karen.
Oh yes, thank you. She said that I had mentioned that sometimes we have an experience when we're young and we don't reflect on it like we can later in life. I had trouble with my parents. I didn't have the world's best parents by any means. And I remember experiences that I had that I didn't understand there, or I took personally and felt they were against me in some way. And now I see those experiences totally differently. And it's like peeling an onion. I'll see it a little differently today, and in another year I'll see it a little differently, and it keeps evolving. I'm sure you all know that there's no such thing as reality, that we all make it up. And we can go back and make up our reality different. We can see ourselves as a different person as we go back and reflect on these things.
Can you give me an example of one of those experiences, specific experiences?
Okay, well, I'll give you the strongest one. The last thing my father said to me, I had not seen him for 5 years, and he was in the hospital. And he said, "Did I control you?" And I said, "Yes, Dad, you did." He said, "I thought so." And then he was ready to hang up. At that time, you can imagine how hurtful that was. And I see it very differently now. I see it as how afraid my father must have been of trying to raise me, to feel like he had to control me, and to want to know he was a success at the end of his life at doing that. Is that?
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, any other questions? then you all have a colored dot on your name tag. Those of you that